Hi, and welcome back to Thone's Mills. I have an apology to make. And some of you may have already noticed this, and some of you may not care. But I have done things out of order here. I started out our study with a recent study with Zechariah 9 and 10, which I thought was where we left off when we went away from Zechariah to do Nehemiah. But I was mistaken, and in fact we have not done Zechariah 7 and 8. So right now I'm going to be presenting to you Zechariah 7 and 8. Sorry for the confusion, but I noticed this last time when I began talking about that we were now in the third part of Zechariah, and then I realized, hey, we never did the second part of Zechariah. So with that said, this is actually quite a informative and useful part of the study, in that it sort of is a good transition from the celebrating the building of the wall to celebrating the much greater event that's going to be coming, which is what the third part is about. So with that mea culpa in the bag, we're going to study Zechariah 7 and 8. Zechariah 7. And it came to pass in the 4th year of King Darius that the word of the Lord came unto Zechariah in the 4th day of the 9th month, even in Chislu, when they had sent unto the house of God Sherezer and Regem-melech and their men to pray before the Lord, and to speak unto the priests which were in the house of the Lord of hosts, and the prophets, saying, Should I weep in the 5th month, separating myself, as I have done these so many years? Then came the word of the Lord of hosts unto me, saying, Speak unto all the people of the land, and to the priests, saying, When ye fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th month, even those 70 years, did ye at all fast unto me, even to me? And when ye did eat, and when ye did drink, did you not eat for yourselves, and drink for yourselves? Should ye not have the words which the Lord hath cried by the former prophets, when Jerusalem was inhabited and in prosperity, and the cities thereof round about her, when men inhabited the south and the plain? And we pause there for a little commentary. This second section begins in similar fashion to the first, looking back on the disobedient ancestors, their stubbornness, and their display of God's anger. The question still begs an answer. Had the returnees learned the lesson in exile? Another issue is the temple in Jerusalem. Has it regained its religious authority? The date is 2 years later. prophecies were commonly delivered first orally and then written down later, sometimes many years later. In contrast to the first section of the book, which consists primarily of visions, this section is a sermon that develops and introduces in the visions. This two-man delegation is from the house of God, which is Bethel in Hebrew. Bethel had been the center of worship for the northern 10 tribes. And if you remember, that's were in the divided kingdom. That's the people not from Jerusalem, but rather from the north. And it was 10 of the tribes, and then Jerusalem just had Judah and it's and a little bit of Benjamin, what was left. So then they and the question is, when they were in Bethel, that was the worship center for the northern tribes, and this indeed was a worship center at one time. This was one of the very first places that God came to meet their ancestors, and so it was not inappropriate, but it was once they came out of Egypt, it was no longer the place where they were to worship. They were to worship at the sanctuary where the gifts from the Lord were in the case, let's say. So some of the Israelites who remained in the land during the exile worshipped there. This was Samaria, but they were willing to defer the authority to the priests and prophets at the temple in Jerusalem as long as they found evidence of God's blessing being restored. The answers to the question posed in lesson 3, in verse 3, involved a series of convincing questions designed to accomplish three purposes. First of all, to validate Zechariah as a true prophet of the Lord. Was God speaking through him as he did through the former prophets? Question mark. Also, to demonstrate by taking the same concerns as the prophets of the past, that God had endowed the returned community with the same authority it had before in the exile. And thirdly, what God required in order to have his blessing. So that's three interesting ideas. Number one is, this prophet Zechariah have the same authority as the Isaiah and Jeremiah and the other prophets that they knew, Ezekiel and all of those people. Is he the same? Have the same authority and the same power? Also, does he have to be 100% correct as the other prophets were? They were to be stoned if they missed a prophecy. And finally, how, if he is that, then please tell us how we can regain the authority we had before as God's people. So now back to the text. And the word of the Lord came unto Zechariah, saying, Thus speaking the Lord of hosts, saying, Execute true judgment, and show mercy and compassion every man to his brother, and oppress not the widow, nor the fatherless, the stranger, nor the poor, and let none of you imagine evil against the brother in your heart. But they returned to hearken, and pulled away the shoulder, and stopped their ears, and they should not hear. Yea, they made their hearts as an adamant stone, lest they should learn the law and the words which the Lord of hosts had sent in his spirit by the former prophets. Therefore came a great wrath from the Lord of hosts. Therefore it has come to pass that as he cried, and they would not hear, so they cried, and I would not hear, said the Lord of hosts. But I scattered them with a whirlwind among all the nations whom they knew not. Thus the land was desolate after them, that no man passed through nor returned, for they laid pleasant land desolate. Okay, so the Lord now explains how and why his wrath came upon them, and the rulings by prophets that they were in various ways not good. The prophets typically took the role of prosecutor, generally singling out three forms of disobedience: idolatry, empty worship, and social injustice. Those are the sins that the Israelites had committed. The last is the focus here. Taking advantage of the poor earned them the most severe punishment. Wow. You understand that, therefore, being unkind to a person is a more serious offense than worshiping an idol or worshiping nothing, an empty worship. It is our behavior which teaches others. Defiant shoulders, ears, and hearts are the billboards, like metaphors, for the insensitivity of the chosen people. They repeatedly refused to make Yahweh their God. With the pride of sinfulness summarized in verses 4 through 12, God was justified in stirring up a whirlwind that scattered the participants in all directions. Typically, a prophetic language, judgment is expressed in hyperbola. So, we think about this for a minute, and we now have a better perspective on why they were sent into exile. For a while, God allowed them to be in exile, or, the cart and the horse kind of thing. Somewhat he had them sent into exile, and certainly he did not protect them from being sent into exile. And so this is why that they had these three sins: idolatry, which that is, they were worshiping something other than him; empty worship, They were just going through the motions of doing what they thought was the right thing, but with no real theological basis, and with they did what made them look good. And then finally, the really bad curse here was that they did not treat others that were less advantaged than them well. And that, it was mentioned widows, children without a father, poor people were just ignored by the people because they were too busy either worshiping idols or going through the emotions of worshiping Yahweh. And that was a very serious sin. And I think we all agree today that is one of the more serious sins. So that leads us up, that transition of guilt, so to speak, leads us into Zechariah 8 from the text. Again the word of the Lord of hosts came unto me, saying, This saith the Lord of hosts, I was jealous for Zion with great jealousy, and I was jealous for her with great fury. Thus saith the Lord, I am returned unto Zion, and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem shall be called a city of truth, and the mountain of the Lord of hosts, the holy mountain. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, there shall yet old men and old women dwell in the streets of Jerusalem, and every man with his staff in his hand for very age. And the streets of the city shall be full of boys and girls playing in the streets thereof. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, it will be marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of those people in those days. Should it also be marvelous in mine eyes, saith the Lord of hosts? Thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, I will save my people from the east country and from the west country, and I will bring them, and they shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and they shall be my people, and I shall be their God in truth and righteousness. Wow. Think that's what the people wanted to hear? The sermon now turns dramatically from judgment, as it was all judgment in chapter 7, to blessing. The complete dispersion of total restoration. Spectacular blessings from God had already been proclaimed in the visions, but now they are enlarged. With the returnees barely existing on the land, Zechariah sought to energize them with the potential of becoming something magnificent. But it would only occur by an act of God. And don't we need to recognize that today? That we can do things that are pretty good on our own merits, but really beautiful things. Wonderful music, wonderful art, wonderful thoughts. Those come by an act of God in imparting the artist, the musician, with talents to produce those things which are godly. The connection between a zealous God and a God of fervor is evident elsewhere in the prophets, suggesting that his deep desire for relationship was matched by decisive judgment against anything that would interfere whether from within or without. That is, he is going to be unhappy and displeased if either we cause a ruckus against people who are doing what he wants, or if some external force causes such a ruckus. And so we need to, an equal opportunity employer here, causing a ruckus that upsets the world that he wants his people to live in is going to be a serious offense. God announced restoration instead of dispersion. Language of reversal is common in the prophets, and boy, we got some reversal coming up here. He announced judgment or blessing. The object was the same, to enforce the covenant and encourage obedience in the prophets. Jerusalem was generally the centerpiece of God's blessing, with special emphasis on Zion, the holy mountain. Calling Jerusalem the city of truth is another reversal. It had previously been referred to as a harlot. So we see a total reversal of his viewpoint on the location. No, he allowed this location to be totally destroyed. And that's why they had to come back and build the temple and build the city again. But now he says it is a city of truth. And may it always be so. In times of hostility, a city's population could be decimated and the streets made unsafe, with the young and old being the first to suffer. This scene here alters to an idyllic alternative. That is, the old men and women totter around the streets with their walking sticks and are enjoying their lives, as are the children who run the streets without fear and chase and play with each other. And how different is this than the Jerusalem that was destroyed, with armies surrounding it, starvation. It's a totally different thing. This place becomes a paradise almost. Through the marvelous blessings described by many suggest the imagination. Since God was the designer, they were not too much to hope for. The reference of the remnant identifies the returnees as the true community of restoration as promised by the prophets. So why is it going to be such an idyllic place? Because God designed it that way. And the prophets predicted it was going to happen. And now it's happened. No surprise. God promises things. And we enjoy and reap the good things. They shall be my people, and I will be your God, indicates full restoration of the covenant relationship. And this is in contrast to God's declaration in previous prophets, you are not my people, and I will not be your God, which is what appeared in Hosea before these punishments have been inflicted. Isn't it wonderful that we can count on a God who loves us so much, He even forgives our little things, and when He does punish us, it's with the idea of restoration and love, not bitter suffering. God always, it was hundreds of years since Solomon before he finally had them kidnapped, basically. And even then, it was the Assyrians that took the 10 northern tribes. And then there was another period of time, 50 or 60 years before the Babylonians came and took the southern tribes, Benjamin and Judah. And, and the thing is that Benjamin and Judah had occasionally good kings who did right for periods of time, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever, and therefore God approved of the society at those times when the kings were leading it in the right direction. So, and you see, that never happened with the northern kingdoms. They worshipped in two places with golden calves, basically, and therefore they never practiced the worship of the one true God, and so therefore they were taken quicker, earlier, and also were dispersed every which place, whereas the Babylonian captivity was sort of a picnic compared to the Assyrian captivity, where you had no idea where you were going to wind up. The Babylonians just simply moved you to Babylon, and then eventually the Persians sent you back. So it was a different level of punishment between the northern tribes and the southern tribes, simply because the southern tribes from time to time had good leaders that led them in the right direction. Okay, back to the text. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, let your hands be strong, ye that hear in these days these words by the mouth of the prophets, which were in the day that the foundation of the house of the Lord of hosts was laid, that the temple might be built. For before these days there was no hire for man, nor any hire for beast, neither was there any peace to him that went out and became a very in because of affliction. For I said, all men, every one against his neighbor. But now I will not be unto the residue of this people as the former days, saith the Lord of hosts. For the seed shall be prosperous, the vine shall give her fruit, and the ground shall give her increase, and the heavens shall give their due. And I will cause the remnant of the people to possess all these things. And it shall come to pass that as you were a curse amongst the heathen, O house of Judah, the house of Israel, so will I save you, and ye shall be a blessing. Fear not, but let your hands be strong. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, as I thought to punish you when your fathers provoked me in wrath, saith the Lord of hosts, and I repented not. So again have I thought in those days to do well unto Jerusalem and to the house of Judah. Fear ye not. These are the things that ye shall do. Speak ye every man to the truth of his neighbor. Execute the judgment of truth and peace in your gates. And let none of your images you imagine evil in your hearts against the neighbor. And love so no false oath, for all of these are things that I hate, saith the Lord. Jeremiah's sermon was presented approximately halfway between the laying of the foundation and the completion of the temple. Let your hands will be strong suggests that the sermon included encouragement for persistence in the work of rebuilding. Everything the returnees could have hoped for was addressed in this sermon, which was rich with blessings. The prosperity, increase, and dew are the opposite of the experience of the land during the previous 2 decades. The terms of the covenant make it clear. In order for the returnees to enjoy the incredible blessings that God offered, they would need to obey the covenant standard of social justice. And now the final scriptures of today. And the word of the Lord of hosts came unto me, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the fast of the 4th month, and the fast of the 5th, and the fast of the 7th, and the fast of the 10th shall be to the house of Judah joy and gladness, and cheerful feasts. Therefore love the truth and peace. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, it shall yet come to pass that there shall come people, and the inhabitants of many cities, and the inhabitants of one city shall go to another, saying, Let us go speedily to pray before the Lord, and to seek the Lord of hosts. I will go also, yea, many people and strong nations shall come to seek the Lord of hosts in Jerusalem, and pray before the Lord. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, In those days it shall come to pass, that 10 men shall take hold out of all languages of the nations, even shall that take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, saying, We will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. So in response to the question that initiated the sermon, whether it was necessary to continue mourning the destruction of Jerusalem, the Lord announced reversal. Fasts of lamentation were to be transformed into joy and gladness and cheerful feasts. The idea that the inhabitants of many cities in the world would come to Jerusalem is well attested in the Old Testament. To Solomon, such gatherings was a sign of greatness, both of Jerusalem and of God's presence. The image was a fitting conclusion to Zechariah's sermon. It seemed insignificant. The seemingly insignificant city of Jerusalem was now seen as the most important city in the world. And if you remember the things that Solomon did with the Queen of Sheba and many, many other people who came to visit and learn, that's what it was intended to happen, and that's what will happen in the future. In the ancient Near East, grabbing the hem of a garment was an act of submission and supplication. Since the Israelites spent years under foreign domination, they would have needed to obey the conventions of social justice. Gentiles showing submission to them would be an astonishing reversal. Think about it. If you have a long robe on and you reach down and touch, someone reaches down and touches the bottom of your robe, they have to be bent over or kneeling or some posture which puts them at a disadvantage socially to you. Your head is bowed before them, so to speak. That was the way in the world of that era that you showed submission, is you bent down and touched the hem of the bottom of the garment. So and most of the people who lived in Babylon, and Assyria for that matter, probably suffered that humiliation many times to honor their involuntary, to them, hosts, the Babylonians or the Assyrians. So we see now the first flash of what's going to be the millennial reign. Although Jerusalem became a great city again, it never had its greatness thought of by the entire world as it had in the days of Solomon and David. But we know that it's going to be once again rebuilt. And in the millennial reign, it will be the most popular tourist site, so to speak, in the universe, because that's where the living God, living on earth, will have his temple, and all who believe will want to visit there. And I picture a kind of a inane visualization of, let's say you are a Boston Red Sox fan and you want to go to Fenway Park at least once to see the Red Sox play. Or you're another kind of a New York Yankee fan and you want to go to Yankee Stadium. You are a art fan and want to go to the Louvre in Paris because that's where so much of the good art is. We as humans like to go to places which have a meaning to us, and to think that in the millennial reign Jerusalem will have the greatest meaning. Visiting Jerusalem will be something that people dream about. So we see what an encouragement this was that Zechariah gave to the people of the return. Even though the whole thing wasn't built yet, still there's promises that it's going to be very, very special and very, very different from any other place. Okay, so now that I've got this done and will be processing it and uploading it today, Friday. I will possibly do another one today on Zechariah 11, or at least make progress so that I can do it early tomorrow. So we should go to the Lord in prayer and then end it. Dear blessed Heavenly Father, thank you for being a enthusiastic supporter of us when we do the right thing. And it seems that even if we do just some of the right things, you will encourage us with that knowledge and reward us. So, Lord, we appreciate this. We want to tell other people about what a good God you are and how important you are to us as saved people, and also for the unsaved, how important a salvation experience would be for them. So just let us go out into the community every day with the thought, I want to glow so that other people will notice. And if they ask me why, I have both the nerve and the right words to tell them about my dear friendship with Jesus. Now, as we have another weekend coming up, don't forget church on Sunday morning, or whenever you have church. And sing the hymns or the praise songs with a little more gusto, so that God will know that you are indeed in tune with His big plan. Please be with all the people who are listening, Lord, and please be with me as I continue this series. And I ask all this in the blessed name of Jesus. Amen. So here I am, talking with you, and I guess I better leave now so that I can go process this. So we'll see you next time, whether that's later today or first thing in the morning. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.